Okay, I'm so excited today. Reza and I are introducing a good friend, Rupesh Nigam. He is a physician executive who was an executive with Kelsey-Seybold during the merger slash acquisition at Optum, where I was and Rupesh was as well, and previously Reza was as well. So one of my favorite people that I got to meet while I was at Optum. So Rupesh, great to have you here. Why don't you kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody, I guess, let's start with like a brief outline of your career journey or path from residency onward.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to be here. Thanks for calling me a friend. The check is in the mail. Hello, everybody. It's a esteemed privilege to be here on this platform with Reza and Alex. I am an internal medicine physician. And I've been doing value-based care for now close to 20 years, I want to say. Trained here at University of Texas in Houston, joined Kelsey-Seybold Clinic right after that, and had the pleasure of sort of growing with the program over there. When I left, I was a senior medical director, and then I joined InnovaCare as a chief medical officer, which is an MSO company based out of Florida, again, value-based care delivery. And most recently, I have taken over the position of chief operating officer for Next Level Medical. Next Level Medical is a pretty innovative company. They are tech-enabled, doing face-to-face urgent care and using technology and the urgent care backbone to now deliver direct primary care. So advanced primary care, as we call it, mainly to small to medium-sized employers. And it's a fantastic platform, and we have very high NPS scores, around about 95, with all of our employers and the patients that we are providing. So again, very excited to be here.
Awesome. So take us to the beginning. You're a hospitalist, you're doing shifts, you're a year into it, right? Like a lot of our listeners and people taking this course are perhaps, similar state, maybe a little further along. Like, how did you get to the first role, and what did you actually do beyond your clinical duties?
Yeah, great question. Oftentimes, as I'm talking and sitting and talking with peers or young physicians, and this question does come up. So, what I would say is, if you're doing something while taking care of a patient and it doesn't make any sense to you, or you think, man, why am I doing it? Say something. Ask that question. I'll give you an example. We had I want to say 73 or 74-year-old in the ICU. Third code that I was running on that same patient within a span of 2 days. Nobody had spoken to her about end of life. Nobody. And this is somebody who comes in from a rural area and it's looking at the care team as people who know what they're doing, and that people who would advise her and her family members of what the right next step is. Nobody's spoken to her, right? And the patient was like, Doc, I don't want this. Stop jumping on my chest. Just let me go and be with my creator. So ask that question. And when you ask those right questions, somebody will notice you, because there's always somebody watching, right? Somebody will notice you, and then they will be like, all right, well, Doc, you asked this patient this question. That sounds so right. Why don't I have you come in and talk to this person, or let's sit down and see what we can do for more patients like this. Those are the things that I would say are very simple. And I can bet you that every resident, every fresh attending is thinking of those things. Well, while I was a resident in my third year, you used to tell me to do this. But now that I'm attending, do I really have to do that?
Let's double click on that, because now you're on the receiving end of those questions. And like, how do they ask the question, right? Because there's so many people who are in the trenches, they're tired, they're burnt out, and the way they ask their question sounds a lot more like complaining than something that's productive. So give me a little bit, now that you're receiving those questions, like, what's the way to go approach it?
Well, I would say, number one, and most importantly, know your audience. right? If the person that you're asking this question has the ability to help you or answer that question appropriately, then they will. If you ask, if you're burnt out and you ask another burnt out physician, the answer that you are going to get is, let's go to the bar next door. But it's not going to be any productive solution or anything that is going to help you. So know your audience, know who you're asking that question to. And right at the time that you want to ask that question, you have that burning desire to ask that question, don't do anything when you're super happy or when you're super pissed. Do not the right time to do it. And
I think
that's, I
that's
guess, where
one of the most important lessons that took me a long time to learn. Do not send that angry email. At least wait one night. I've absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's the difference between maturity. As you can see, if I had any hair on my head, it would be white. But and somebody who's just fresh off college or off training. I would say that does make a huge difference. So know who you're asking that question to. Can that person actually help you? And B, don't just shoot off the bat. It's almost never, and especially in a professional setting, right? I mean, when you're asking that question, you're thinking that this person is going to help me get to the next step. You only get one chance at making a first impression. So, do I need to elaborate
Rupesh,
more?
what was your first kind of administrative role, and how did you even get that role?
Yeah, so my first administrative role, how I got it, was actually I was put through a test. I was sent out to pasture. I asked too many questions that, why are we doing this? Why are we not doing this? How can we design a new system which doesn't do X, Y, and Z? Then I was told, okay, well, you want to do all of that? Great. Here's your opportunity. Why don't you go and start a new hospitalist pod? Set how things are going to be done. Develop your own network of referral sources in a hospital which doesn't have any of that. And that's where I got an opportunity to set the right kind of expectations with the community physicians, with the physicians who were sending patients to the ER at the drop of a hat. As a ER doctor, Alex, and as a hospitalist and internist, I'm a hospitalist, you're an internist, you understand that not every patient needs to go to the ER. Sometimes what you need is someone to come and take that patient off your back. Most of the time that is when you're sitting in the clinic and you have that patient who comes in and you just cannot do that. I would make myself available as a hospitalist. I would tell my primary care doctors, if you have a patient whose creatinine went from 0.7 to 1.3 overnight, don't send them to the ER. Call me. We'll figure it out, right? So they would typically call me and put that patient in another room, and I'll go talk to the patient. I'll send the patient home from there. Because it's usually something that's not acute that doesn't need to go to the ER, unless it's rhabdo and they need fluids, which often we could do in the clinic or something like that. So that is what I started doing, and I created that little value-based care delivery ecosystem. Again, social admits to the hospital. Again, something that happens quite often in community hospitals. We have a weekend drop-off. Folks would come drop off their elderly parents at the ER, go to Louisiana for a casino, come back on Monday, take their patient home against medical advice. So, stuff like that, which we could avoid. I mean, if I tell the ER doctor, let's not admit this patient and make the family member take them back home. We are not boarding in the ER or in the hospital. You've got to be available for those doctors. And that's what I started doing in that little hospital, community hospital. And that is when I established my brand, if you will. And that's what got me the medical directorship. So the initial responsibility that I had for medical directorship was in the post-acute care. So patients who were going unnecessarily to skilled nursing facilities, to acute inpatient rehabs, or even to LTACs, working with those patients and just sending the right patient at the right setting with the right level of care, I was able to save about $2 million for a small municipality where the community hospital was located. This is a self-insured municipality, so it's a lot of money to have saved. That's what got me on this leadership ladder of understanding what value is and what value is to different constituents.
Yeah, surprisingly, I started somewhat similarly. I was doing projects, literally doing secondary ER diversion years ago. Front door management, we called it different things. So walk me through going from a project to infrastructure, right?
Mhm.
So I think early on, when I was doing projects, I was like, all right, well, this is something I want to do. This is my brand. I'm at the tip of the spear doing this, as opposed to setting up infrastructure that then others can do this and then have, all the bells and whistles of change management and care delivery transformation and so on.
But before you answer, I want to add on to what Reza's asking, which is there's a shift in mindset from just complaining about something to now you actually own it, and you're all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, there's some aspects or dimensions here I didn't fully consider. So talk to us about that as well.
Okay, well, great. So let me answer your question first, Alex, and then I'll go to what Reza asked. So I guess you need to be wired a little differently when you start thinking about processes, about how do I set up a scalable process, which could be eventually implemented in your system, in your hospital system, in your healthcare system, whichever you want to call it. So you start identifying what are the essential pieces and how many people do you actually need. So you pardon my French, but you walk it back asswards, right? You see what is the product that you have to deliver, and then you look at who are the people that are intricately involved. So me as a care delivery, as a provider, I need nurses. I need nurses who are able to talk to the patients, talk to the provider, and who know what they're doing. Then I need a similar group of providers in the community. So let's only talk about post-acute care delivery. Hospitalists, case managers, sniffists, who would believe in what you're saying and what you're doing, and then the specialists who are seeing those patients either in an LTAC or a sniff. That's the basic unit, one unit when you create, and then you start looking at it how it is scalable. So coming to what Reza was asking about the infrastructure, it's a matter of taking a step back and looking at what you have and what you need to grow, and then now putting in a little bit of a business lingo, then creating out a pro forma. Because look, you got to show the value prop before you can go to your CEO and say, well, this is how much I need to invest to deliver this ROI. And I did that. I looked at what was the per night or per day cost of a patient in a particular SNF versus in a particular acute care hospital, ER visit, or a acute med-surg bed. And then if you then expand it out to, if this patient goes to a SNF, they're going to stay there for minimum 21 days. We all know that. That's before their copay kicks in. And how much are we paying per night? And how much would it cost for me to hire X number of case managers who are going to be required to do this? So start building up on that. And it's going to take time, and it's going to take experience. And if you are somebody who's just coming fresh out of residency or training, you will need somebody, a mentor, to help you with that. But if you are interested in doing this, then you got to start identifying people who can help you with it. Because by yourself, it's not going to lie, it's not easy to go out and start doing it de novo.
Compare the first pro forma that you made to the most recent pro forma that you've made, right? Like, what's gone into the differences, and how does a decade or more of experience impact your assumptions?
Yeah. Yeah, interesting question. It's like the difference between how would I say, MSRP and invoice price, right?
Brilliant.
You gotta know. how much does it actually cost? So when you're looking at the cost of a nurse who's going to be doing case management, you can't just be looking at their salary, right? Salary plus benefits, so SWB, as we call them. You've got to look at technology. You're going to look at, are they going to be traveling? So then you're going to have to pay them for travel, et cetera, et cetera. So my first pro forma, well, I should say I partly rolled it out, but if I would have rolled it out completely, we would have lost $1.5 million, because I would have been paying providers to sit in traffic. And I'll give you an example why I say that. Houston is probably the third or the fourth largest city. It is the fourth largest, fast becoming the third largest city in the country. To go from our westernmost site to our easternmost site, even without traffic, it's going to take about 45 minutes. So if I'm a staff, if I have two patients who are in skilled nursing facilities, and I say, well, these patients should be going home because then they're not getting any benefit from physical therapy, but the SNF doctor who's there is not going to write discharge orders because they are on the payroll of SNF. I want my nurse provider to go there and do that. 45 minutes from point A to point B is a time that I am paying them for nothing, right? So if I had 5 providers covering the city of Houston, 5 times, about 110 plus benefits, et cetera, you do the pro forma, I would have lost $1.5 million. So going from there to now understanding that, you don't have to employ everybody. You can have, you can just pay people per diem, or you can contract them, contract folks who are already at that facility. That takes understanding, and that takes, your knowledge of the market that you're in. So without going into too much details, Reza, I would say that yes, it does take. I'm a little slow and a little thick, so it would probably not take anybody as long as it took me. But still, you do take a couple of years or more of experience of creating pro formas and working with people to tell you that this is not going to work, or this is going to work.
Yeah, and I feel like to be younger and a little bit arrogant is necessary to give yourself the confidence to do things that you've never done before. When you've done it 10 times and you look back, it's like, wow, how wrong was I like the first go around? But what a privilege for someone to trust me to take on risks, to take on projects, to go and do things. Like the fake it till you make it. But
Yep.
You've done 30 years of training to be a doc, but you've done 0 experience current to get that first one, and someone's got to believe in you to let you experiment to get your hands dirty.
Very true. Very true. If you are fortunate enough to play with somebody else's money, do it.
Yeah. Rupesh, talk to us about your, after your first administrative role. I saw you did work in the palliative care space and behavioral health.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for this sort of change, and how was your kind of mindset evolving about these sort of leadership roles as you gained more experience?
Yeah. So I started off as a hospital services director, did post-acute work, and that's where I'm going to make a statement. We don't do death well in our country. Profound statement. I don't want to be, joking about it, but I think that's what sort of got me onto this path of real value for patients, for putting a patient first and understanding what is it that actually the patient wants. A person, I'm going to go on the morbid side a little bit over here. Person wants to die at home in their own bed, surrounded by their family members, not hooked onto a machine, poked by 50 needles, and surrounded by strangers. That understanding came to me when I was dealing more and more with patients, in LTACs and in skilled nursing facilities, and that is what led me to palliative care, because having done that and being pretty successful in helping patients out to be more at home and more in their own comfortable bed than just living in a SNF, I could see that that conversation was not happening. We were not treating patients. We were not giving dignity to the patients in the last few months or years of their lives. And we all know, right, the last 6 months are where 80% of the healthcare cost happens in a patient's life, at least in the developed cities in our country. That's what got me onto palliative care. And as we've been talking, the reason why I could do that is because now I had experience, now I had proven track record of what I could do, what I could deliver. And palliative care, when I started off, was still, it was palliative care equal to hospice. I had to fight internally with the providers and tell them palliative care is not hospice. I have, mild hypertension. I could be on palliative care because it's just, symptom palliation and kind of convincing me that it's okay. I'll still live long enough and have a quality of life. So those kind of conversations, and I could have that only because now I had the title of a medical director, and I wore a jacket instead of a white coat most of the time. So that's what got me started. Now, it was still a challenge. Don't get me wrong, but I think having a track record and then tackling these more difficult to do things was easier, palliative care wise. Behavioral health wise, that again was, we all know it. The access to behavioral health still sucks for our patients, particularly so if you're a Medicare patient. If you're a Medicare patient, you want to have a psychiatry appointment, they'll give it to you in 6 months. If you call a cash pay, they'll see it the same day, which sort of is a big issue. And that was another big challenge that we had to do. And what I did was, if we cannot partner with a established system to provide behavioral health for our patients, our Medicare patients, then I went ahead and hired our own behavioral health, a psychiatrist and a couple of therapists, and they were only beholden to our patients. They were not on any network. Only Kelsey-Seybold Medicare Advantage patients could see them. So they were as if they didn't exist for the world, only for our patients, because otherwise our patients were not able to get any care anywhere. So stuff like that, which you can do once you have established yourself.
So Rupesh, I think you got an MBA at some point as well. So I'd love, a lot of our listeners are trying to figure out, should they invest the time and money to get an MBA? So what's your perspective on what the MBA taught you, and especially what did it not teach you, and how much did you end up actually learning just by doing or by other means?
Yeah. I would say, if you have time, most importantly, if you have the time and the wherewithal to do it, go ahead and do it. As a physician, had my head down and swimming in my lane. Swimming pool has those black lanes in the bottom. If you go to a public swimming pool like I do, and you just keep your head down and you keep on swimming in your lane, right? As a medical provider. But what the MBA did to me was, essentially, I took my head out of the water to take a breath, and I could see this entire world out there. And it's just, we are not exposed to that. As physicians, we are not exposed to that. In my next role after Kelsey, I was sitting in a boardroom with private equity, with VCs. Only one other person in that boardroom was a physician. The language that they speak is not the language that we speak. You won't understand that. If you want to go and talk about P&L and all of those fancy words that are thrown at you, you got to understand it. And understanding it, you can go to Investopedia and you can go to ChatGPT and learn all of that. But there's understanding and then conversing back to them is a different thing. I'm not going to say that it gives you any more respect, because thankfully, as physicians, you hopefully are respected a lot. But it does give you that edge. And I'm also going to make another profound statement here and say, healthcare companies should be run by physicians. You've got to have that credibility. all along as a medical director at Kelsey, and even further on out, I was still taking call in the hospitals. I would take call on the weekends because you've got to be in the trenches to know what's going on, number one. Number two, to have the credibility to be able to tell a physician, well, yeah, you can still do that. You don't need to call a specialist if the crit is 30. You figured it out. Um, it's good to be able to do that. So same thing happens with when you're sitting across the table from business folks. If you have the cred, they take you a little bit more seriously. And that's what it's all about. So, and then apart from that, I mean, there's behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, and organizational psychology. I never knew anything like that existed.
It's
So that's what
interesting.
it happened.
I did my MBA during medical school up front, and I feel like I got more out of my residency and fellowship training versus if I'd gotten my MBA in my 40s, I would have gotten more out of my MBA, having more real-time experience. One of the things that I was worried about, and I think a lot of our listeners are also thinking about, is when you're further along, the opportunity cost of the time spent is something that many folks feel like they cannot put in, right? An extra 2 years, etc. Now, some people do executive programs or night programs, but to do the full-time deep dive, and hence we've created this course. It's obviously not exactly the same as a 2-year full-time MBA, but to get people started so they can get some projects under their belt and move down that road. Um, now, I look back to let's move on to your current role.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit more about that. How did you decide to make that switch, right? Because there's the early career part, but now that you've done this for a while, you have choices, you have
Mhm.
relationships, you can look under the hood a little bit more thoughtfully. Um, how'd you pick this one?
So two principles that I use when looking for a position, or the two principles that I've been using. One is that you got to believe in the company that you work for. So you pick a company, and then you work with whoever is there. Second thing is you pick a leader. That this leader or this person is going to teach me, train me for my next position. And look what works for you. Here at Next Level, I believe that I got best of both the worlds. I am working with Juliet Breeze, who's just a charismatic, very visionary leader. And the Next Level, the company, the care delivery platform that they are using actually is pretty innovative. There's one other big company, Marathon Health. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them or not. They're doing this, and it's actually what is needed today. So direct primary care or advanced primary care, as we're calling it. Think about it. If you're a small to medium employer, 50 to 200, self-insured, your biggest spend right now is on inpatient costs and on ER utilization. And if you have a labor force that works from say 7 a.m. to shift work, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 3-4 days a week, their only options of seeking care is the ER. Because if they cannot go to the doctor's office during 8 to 5, then they're not getting care. And most of them are hourly wages, hourly labor. They cannot drop their daytime because they won't get paid to go to a doctor's office, right? What we're doing here is sort of a subscription model as direct primary care on a PEPM, so per employee per month. And our members are getting unlimited primary care visits, virtual or face-to-face. If you're a diabetic and you need just a refill or a script or a lab, but you can't go in, you're running sugars of 500, 600 on the daily. And if you're working in a sawmill, a lot of bad things can happen. So think about it. And I think that's what is needed for a majority of the businesses. And not every business is a Fortune 5 company. We're still about 80 to 90% of the businesses are still smaller businesses. And I think that's the cutting edge, or that's the innovation that we are providing here. So I use our urgent care backbone to provide this care. So it really appealed to me, this model. And then you layer on top of this, value-based care delivery. Now, if you're doing evidence-based care for these employees who are coming in, you are actually providing a lot of value to the patients and the employers. So it's just that model that got me pretty interested. One extra thing to add, it's a stepwise thing. So from medical director, senior medical director, to chief medical officer, to now chief operating officer. As a chief operating officer, I do have oversight over the P&Ls. I do have oversight over the operations, not just clinical operations, but general operations, facilities, tech, et cetera, et cetera. It does take, experience to be able to come and sit down and look at a P&L and look at what the cash forecast is. And that's where I think it's important to have just a little bit of a business understanding to be able to come this route. And I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do, but if you are choosing to do this, then I would, again, going back to what you asked me about the business training, I think it's worth the while.
Rupesh, I think this concept of this business is brilliant. And a lot of folks a lot of physicians especially, who have only dealt in a fee-for-service model, and they hear the term value-based care, they don't even understand what the various business models are and how they are actually superior to pure fee-for-service. In this sort of model, it just makes so much more sense, right? So if that diabetic needs just a script, the doctor doesn't have to pull them into an in-person visit to update their prescription. They can just update their prescription, right? And it's the entire end-to-end, the experience makes more sense for all the stakeholders. So I think that's brilliant. So how big is this company, and are you guys geographically just focused on Houston, or tell us a little bit more?
So 53 locations: Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Beaumont, Neederville, which is another little small town close to Beaumont. Born in Houston, and Houston in of itself is a huge market.
Yeah.
There's a lot of businesses. So we still have a long way to go within Houston itself, but we have reached out to Austin by demand. We've reached out to San Antonio by demand. So what we are doing essentially is just like any other business should do. Look at where our demand is and then expand. We are looking to expand out of the state. But again, you have to be fiscally responsible before we go out and do that. So we have hopes that we will be in multiple states very soon. We are working on our tech platform to be able to scale it up in a way that we can provide services. Because if we want to be a tech-enabled, virtual care platform to be for employees to be sitting at their desk and refilling their prescriptions, or doing a sick visit while sitting on their desk, we need to be able to provide that service. So service, patients first, is what we are looking at, and then expansion based on that.
Rupesh, what brings you joy? I mean, both high-level fulfillment and day-to-day joy, right? Because people can have these conceptual things on paper of what I want to do, but you also need to enjoy your life, right? So tell me about that. You seem like you got a smile on your face. There's a story there.
Brilliant question. Brilliant question. I'm reading a book called Die with Zero. I'm actually reading and listening to it both. Concept there is, nobody ever said, I know maybe Alex, you said, but nobody ever said, oh, I wish I could have bought that extra pair of shoes when you're 90. But you will say, oh, I wish I had spent more time with my kid, or I wish I had gone to see the pyramids of Giza, or I wish I would have just gone out to the park with my wife a couple of times because the day seems so beautiful outside. That, if you can get that understanding earlier on in your life, you get that smile on your face much earlier on in your life. What brings me joy is when I'm sitting here and you said the word joy, first thing that comes to my mind is when I enter home and the kids are making funny faces at me and the dogs are coming running at me and asking for their treat. That's what brings me joy, and I am blessed. I am super blessed to be able to sit here in front of you, for the two of you, great people, talking about all of these things, but knowing that when I'm done with this, I go home and change into my, super comfortable shorts and t-shirt with 20 holes and just sit on my couch and enjoy that cup of tea.
I love it. Alex and I talk about this all the time, and you know, it's got to start somewhere. It's
Mhm.
got to start with that initial hospitalist, medical director role, etc., to be able to get to a place where you have a little bit more autonomy, a little bit more control, right? Because like the elements that we hear over and over are, I want to spend time with my family, but then I'm on call every weekend, or I'm working like 17 nights in a year, etc., right? Like, but it's got to start somewhere to say yes to things, to build that career, to over time have more and more autonomy and more flexibility, both on the work front, but also on your schedule and on the home front. Alex, anything else as we kind of wrap up?
No, just this has been such a great conversation, Rupesh. So any final thoughts to those folks who are a little bit earlier in their career and trying to figure out how to transition to some sort of leadership or executive role? Any final kind of recommendations there?
Yeah, there's no magic bullet. Um, if you think you're ready to go ahead and do it, just stop and think one more time. Are you ready to do it? You have to be ready for what comes next. If you're on a salary, and you want to go on your own, it's gonna be a little bit of a change when you're not having that salary coming into your bank account on a regular basis. But I'll tell you this: when you do transition, it's fantastic. Um, Being able to innovate, being able to be independent, and make decisions on your own is what the spirit is all about. What this entrepreneurial spirit is all about. What you know. Uh, I'll say, make another statement before we end here. I wasn't born in Texas, but I got to Texas as quickly as I could. This is a bumper sticker you see in Texas all the time. And what I'm trying to say here is that it takes time, and we are all blessed to be in a situation, particularly if you're a physician and trained and finished your training, to be in a situation where you can make those decisions. So go ahead and do it. Don't be scared. There's usually a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. Uh, you'll be okay if you make a transition.
Fantastic. Rupesh, thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My esteemed pleasure.